we go.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. On Wednesday, May 13th at 3:15 p.m., I call this special meeting of the 911 Services Enterprise Board to order. Thank you for being here at this special meeting. To start us off, we're going to go into the contract with the Colorado 911 Resource Center. So I have that latest version with the input from the state, as well as the changes we made redlined last week. I was thinking we could go through starting with those redline changes, accept, deny, further modify, and talk through things as they came up, unless there's anything in particular anybody wanted to focus on to start off with. First up was just the date changes, going toward a lot of the discussion in today's meeting, moving it to a fiscal year, state fiscal year, but with June included. So essentially 13 months for this first, and then moving us into a state fiscal year, July through June, moving forward. Any issues with accepting these date changes? Take off that. And Daryl Branson as the telecom programs section chief. And he is not the resource center treasurer. So we can acknowledge that. And then Connie as the executive director, and that she will be the principal representative and the signer. That has been confirmed. Any questions, comments, issues there? All right. Executive director. And then, yes, Matt.
I only have two comments for this whole contract, and they're both nitpicks. This is one of them. You need a comma there. Underneath the signature line, Michael Berry, comma.
All right, good there.
And I wouldn't worry too much about formatting. Contracting will fix any of that if there's a problem.
Let's skip. There was a comment on page 8, I believe. Just talking about the state fiscal year and the contract total not to exceed that. I don't see any issues, especially since we're going to the fiscal year. Any questions or concerns with this? All right, we shall leave it as such. Statement of work, we added in this preamble section about recognizing the importance of the Resource Center's work in the community. I think everybody was in agreement with all of these changes from back in December, January. So there shouldn't be. Please raise your hand, say anything if there are any issues. I'm going to skip this for now because this is the bulk of the changes, and I want to just keep with our changes for the moment. We added in this contract language as far as the funding from the enterprise fee and the enterprise trust cash fund, and removed the part about the telephone emergency telephone charges. Yes, Jody.
Well, I don't know if you guys have had conversations about this previously, but just as a resource center board member, just for my clarification, has there been any discussion about this agreement and the cost for, from the enterprise fund to the resource center board? Should this fund get attacked by legislation in the future? I don't know where you guys have been with your conversations on it. Michael, if you have any insight to that. As I was going through and reading this, I was just wondering, um, how that might work or what you guys' thoughts are.
Sure. I guess as I don't know how in-depth, but questions have come up about whether and how outside influences may impact what we're able to do. Toward this specifically, there is the fact that it's only a year to year, and we are not able to contract unless we have the money in our trust fund, in the cash fund, excuse me. So for fiscal year 27, we have the money to enter into this contract with. While the intention would, of course, be to renew, to come together with the resource center and discuss and renew for the time being, and as long as this is working for everybody and to the benefit of the 911 community. Certainly, if an outside influence were to have an impact on our ability to do that, it would be after a renewal and money in the cash fund. Please, anybody else on the board, correct me on that if I'm speaking out of turn or if there's some other understanding. Does that answer your question, Jody?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I just was curious what the enterprise board's conversations had been as far as, these items that we're watching. So I didn't want to derail the conversation just before it got too far.
No,
Curious.
fair.
Thank you.
Daryl, your hand is up. Matt's hand was up. Daryl, is your comment about that?
It is.
Okay, why don't you go ahead first then?
I just wanted to point out that on page 10 of the contract, there's also a clause stating that if funds are not available to pay for the contract, that the contract may be terminated. So, as much as we don't want that to happen, there is always that possibility. So it is accounted for in the contract itself.
Thank you. Matt, you lowered your hand. Did you have?
Yeah, well, I had a separate point for that section. But that was a good synopsis. Thank you.
For this section or the previous
Yep.
section?
Yeah, right there. The first instance of 911 Services Enterprise Cash Fund needs the in front of it.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Title. And then program administration being agreed upon. And the reporting. And that takes us to the end of that. Okay, so now the new changes, if you will, to discuss from the state contracting. I know we kind of went back and forth on this. That apparently it is the state's desire and direction to use a monthly reimbursement model for all costs, all portions of this contract, not just the contingency funds. So that's where we had already discussed removing these sections since we were moving to a fiscal year, state fiscal year instead of a calendar year. But the majority of the change and addition here is regarding the invoicing process on a month-to-month reimbursement basis. I assume everybody on the 911 Services Enterprise got this update yesterday. Did the Resource Center members get these?
I got a copy.
Did everybody have a chance to read through it? Do we want to scroll slowly? Do you want me to read it out loud? How would we like to proceed with that?
This is Jeff Irvin. It's fine with me.
Which one, Jeff?
As is. Accepted.
Okay. Lynn, go ahead. You are muted.
Too many buttons. So just so I'm clear, we have the $200,000, we have the $50,000. They're going to invoice us monthly. And we won't tap into the $50,000 until the $200,000 is used up? Or if is it that certain expenses get invoiced every month and then that come out of the $200,000 versus the $50,000? I'm not sure what the difference kind of right now is between the 50 and the 200.
So with the core objective being the full-time executive director and the insights and the reports, the monthly up to 200,000 would be specifically for those purposes. Okay. Any other outside purposes, Daryl, stop me, go ahead.
Yeah, if you scroll down just a little bit, Michael, and you weren't incorrect. I'm just adding a little context here. So that paragraph at the top of the page about the $50,000, I think, kind of spells out the difference in that anything beyond the 200,000 is going to have to get additional approval from the enterprise board. Otherwise, the board's not going to have to approve every reimbursement every month. That's all taken care of under the contract. But if the resource center wishes to spend anything in excess of that 200,000 and get reimbursed for it, it's going to have to be pre-approved by the enterprise board.
That's a good point also. Thank you. Yes, Matt.
Lynn, Michael, could we scroll back up to the 200,000 section? Lynn, would it help if that first bullet point in green were reworded a little differently?
Potentially mean to just relate back to.
Yeah, so
the objectives above.
Yeah, so Resource Center invoices to the enterprise monthly, not to exceed $200,000 in total. Something along those lines. And then on the next page, the first bullet point could be amended to start with if needed, comma. Does that help with how you read that?
So as I was listening to Daryl, it sounded like the bullet item that talks about additional direct expenses. Those, it's almost kind of like I feel like we have a little bit of apples and oranges going on here. The additional direct expenses of the $50,000 would not come into play unless you already had used up the $200,000 and would require approval, or they can be while you're using up to $200,000, they just require approval.
So I think at least where I understood our direction, the 200,000 was for these core objectives, the full-time position and reporting and partnership between our entities. And the 50,000 was for other extra expenses as approved. And I guess based on Daryl's, the wording of the contract would allow for invoices up to 200,000 for whatever is on that invoice. And then if it goes over 200, additional confirmation and a pre-approval would be needed before those additional invoices were paid. Do we want to, are we okay with that being how this works out and how it is worded now? Or do we want to do we feel the need to add that additional language referring to what the 200,000 is versus what the 50,000 is? Or as long as the core objectives are being met, is there a need for that?
If we're thinking that the direct expenses go for things other than the core objectives, I would add in to the first bullet item, up to $200,000 to be paid on a monthly basis, paid monthly on a reimbursement basis for, I don't know if expenses is the right word, but to cover funding associated with the core objectives. And then then that makes it, the next piece would be those additional direct expenses then would be things that aren't covered by those two bullet items that still may be appropriate and we would need to approve. And the only question there would be is, yeah, so it sounds like we could incur some of those additional expenses as we're going through and using up our $200,000 and not necessarily waiting until after the $200,000 is all used up. Is that correct? Because it's covering other kinds of things.
I'm okay with that. Matt, I see your language in the chat. I'm not sure where that would go. Is that instead of this bullet point, replacing it with that language?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, that's the suggestion.
Copy it into a new line here just for comparison. Daryl, from your work with the state contracting, I have seen some people who care about the language of to be paid monthly versus monthly invoices. Is that going to be an issue, do you think?
I have no idea. What I would suggest is if you want to propose that language, to leave it in red line. That way they can take a look at it and let us know if they think that's going to work or not.
And anyone, please feel free to modify that. For example, Michael, to the concern that you just mentioned, some folks have stated in the past. It could be monthly resource center invoices to be paid by the enterprise, not to exceed 200,000 in total for the core objectives.
I do think one thing we have to make clear here is that the invoices are not only monthly, but the payments are also monthly, which I think is something maybe missing from that new language.
Yeah.
did you say monthly invoices to and monthly invoices from and payments to the enterprise? Not to exceed 200?
That.
For me, the key point was to put the not to exceed 200,000 in total
Agreed.
for the core objectives as secondary to the schedule.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, we already have the language up, what was it, in page 8, that it couldn't exceed the contract value anyway.
But we made the
I guess
contract
but I
value
guess the contract value is
250, right?
250.
Yeah.
So what if we did, we'll split the baby. Invoices, let's see. Invoices. Something like that. Invoices to be paid monthly, not to exceed $200,000 in total on a reimbursement basis toward fulfillment of the core objectives.
No objections.
And I would just leave that in red line for now so that
Gotcha.
it'll be pointed out to contracting when I send it back to them.
Okay. Is it okay to continue accepting or not the other changes that were in the,
I would say so unless you make any changes to what is here.
okay. All right, continuing on, the direct expenses, the pre-approval, payments will be made on a reimbursement basis again. Any concerns with that bullet point? Hearing none. Each invoice shall include amounts for 1 month covering the previous month, submitting no later than the 5th. Resource Center, any issues with that scheduling?
This is Jeff Irvin, not from me.
Matt?
I did wonder about the basis for 5 days and resource center staff or agents availability for that.
I agree, that seemed tight to me, but that's really on the Resource Center if you're okay with that as far as, having, if you're going to be creating these and preparing them during the month, as long as they get turned in by the 5th, I would default to the Resource Center and their availability and ability to do that.
I think if Connie wants to get paid, she'll make it happen.
Whether she's on vacation for 2 weeks or not.
On what?
What is a strange word?
I haven't taken one of those in 5 years. I hear you.
Yes, Daryl.
So that 5-day window was part of the language that contracting and the DORA budget officer provided me. So I don't know what the source of that is. If we want to propose a different day, maybe like the 15th or something, I can't really see there being a problem with that. But I would also say that if we submit an invoice late, it's still going to be paid.
I can only assume the state wants to clear things out, get the books in order as much as they can. But that is purely supposition on my part.
I believe this language came from a different contract, so they just did a copy and paste, and there may have been a specific reason, like maybe it was being reimbursed through a federal grant process or something like that, where it had to be done by a specific day. But so if you want to propose a different day than the 5th, we could send that back to them and see what they think. I think it was probably fairly arbitrary.
Connie, any preference?
No, I don't. I'm pretty sure I can get it by that date.
No change.
Thank you. This is largely internal, I think, the review by staff to make sure that things are in order. Each invoice will have unique identifying numbers to make sure that from month to month they can be assured to be different. Any issues with that?
Do we intend to have any sort of project number for each of these grants, dollar amounts we give out, et cetera, that might be helpful, or then the invoice to put, with the invoice, not just their invoice number from the state or whatever, but what are like some project code associated with it on our side?
This is
We haven't talked. Sorry, go ahead.
Every state contract gets a number. So what I would suggest is that Connie and I can work on a standardized form for the reimbursements that includes the contract number on it.
Okay.
I think that's a great question, Lynn. Like you could do it even by year, like 26-1, 26-2, or, something like that would be easy to follow too. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and I don't know when and how we would necessarily, when it becomes necessary to do that, but it just seems like as we get more and more grants awarded and things like that, it would be helpful to have some sort of project number on our side. In addition to Dora's contract number.
Matt, you came off mute. Anything to add?
I just agreeing. I was shaking my head, but you probably couldn't hear the rocks rattling.
All right, itemized detail, that will be retained by the Resource Center, subject to review. Any issues with itemized expenses? So my one question would be things like, actually, no, okay. I was gonna say how to itemize the position, but if we can use payroll system, I think that clarifies that. Yes, Daryl?
I'll just point out, I thought this language is a little interesting because it does not require the Resource Center to provide receipts with their reimbursement request, only to retain them in case we want to look at them later. I didn't know if that's something the board wanted to review. If you're fine with that, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to point it out because I thought it was a little unusual.
See, I read that as, it was still required, but then they also had to keep their own books. I thought it was odd language as well, but I did not read it that way.
Yeah, one is about retention, the other one is being provided. I can see where that might not be the most clear, but I took it the same way, Michael.
If that's how you're both taking it, that's probably the way it was intended.
Any issues or concerns? Do we need to request or suggest change to that to clarify?
You could insert required before electronically, or will be required. Yeah.
Include a detailed.
Supporting documentation will be required to be provided electronically.
Include a detailed itemization of actual expended allowable costs with all invoices.
That seems fine.
Resource Center, any issues there?
Jeff Irvin, not on this side.
None here.
All right, I will leave that line in red line for our state friends to look at. And then removing this additional invoicing in Net 45, I'm assuming just because it's wrapped into the other invoices, there isn't a need for this separate bullet point. Am I reading that correctly?
That's right.
All right. Anything else to go over? I think the only other things were formatting, removing the highlights, and then we have these two red lines left for the state to review. Yes, everybody good? All right, I'm excited. I am looking forward to this moving forward. All right, unless there's any other discussion, we will close this document. I'll get this over to Daryl for forwarding up through the state chain. Kirsten, maybe one more look at it, or are you good?
I'm good. Looks good to
All
me.
right. I'll get it to Sage so that Sage, you can forward that out to everybody for their records and references.
Make sure to do that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And unless there's any further discussion, we will close that agenda item. Really appreciate everybody discussing that. Thank you to our Resource Center friends for being here to work through that. Which moves us on to the, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Nope, I was just going to apologize for not being here on time. I didn't see it on my calendar, so.
Quite all right. All right, on to the exciting budget talk. So I have pulled up on the left here is what our budget looked like and what we submitted through our PUC fee setting memo. I threw in some notes and I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's opinion and impression and how best, both from a practical and hopefully legal standpoint, Kirsten, to switch us to a state fiscal year as opposed to what we had planned on the calendar year. So while we budgeted using our priorities and projects. Because we are now flipping that, there is some reverse engineering kind of going the wrong way to put us in line with that fiscal year model over the calendar year model. So these were based on an original annual estimate of $800,000 per year per cent, which is how we eventually got to our 3-cent fee. But then with the calendar 9-month term, because of the delay in receipt, of 1.8. So reverse engineering that to put us into a fiscal year model would be 66.6 thousand per cent per month, 200,000 per 3 cents. So for just the 3 months, taking us on the assumption of not getting January, February, March, only receiving April, May, June at 600,000 for our budget for the end kind of Q4 of fiscal year 2026. Does that all make sense? Is that in my head?
I think the math makes sense.
Okay.
And based on our original projections, if you were to just purely shift it over, so you're just changing the monthly cycle, and of course, then, it would lead down through the expense projections, I guess, too, we have to talk about. My only question, and as I was trying to go through and modify the budget language, and then the thoughts about the actual enterprise budget information we would submit to the legislature, was, do we, because we know and have 2 months of actual revenues, want to look at if we're shifting, do we want to look at all the reality of the revenues being a little lower based on the 3 cents or not? Or just kind of leave it as is, and then we can show that the actuals aren't coming in as budgeted or projected.
Personally, I would like us to change at some point for a more realistic estimate, monthly, annual. I don't know that we have enough data to affirm or deny that. However, I know our first month, if I remember correctly, Daryl, was around 188, but that's, knowing that there was going to be some vendors, telecom companies, that things were catching up. It was the first reporting. And so we should have, do we have 2 now?
We have 2 months. Yeah, we have 2 months, and I just did a kind of similar calculations, only did it on the average of what the 2 months are showing us. And if I were to project that out, where that leaves us through the end of the fiscal year would be at about 500,000 instead of 600,000. So it's all off by about 100,000, which is a relatively sizable percentage, but it may be easiest to just use the current estimates, and then as the budgeted amounts, and then just show what we're underrunning, essentially, compared to our projection.
Yes, Daryl.
Yeah, this is Daryl. Yeah, so the first month was $188,848.89. The second month was $146,187.68. You should be getting, based on what we collected last year, around $200,000 a month. So it is low, but I would I'm saying with almost 100% certainty that it will go up and catch up. And the reason I say that is because the number of lines being reported isn't going down. So that's telling me that they're reporting lines, but they're not paying on time, which is unfortunately fairly typical for the beginning of the year when new surcharge rates go into place. So Rocolobe, which is the company that we contract with to do the collection, and Jolene are, working through company by company to get them all back into compliance. So your chances of not catching up are very low because they're reporting the number of lines, they're just not paying it on time.
Gotcha. Jennifer?
Yeah, and just backing up what Daryl said, Jolene did point out that February's collection was much lower than expected due to one major carrier that paid late. And so you should see some catch up even in March and April.
All right, then I guess even before we talk hard numbers, I'm curious how best to proceed with essentially amending our budget such that it ends in a month and a half, and reflecting that adjustment and I guess the larger question at the end of that is, do we need a new memo to DORA, to the PUC, or is it, as a living document, is it just the next opportunity? So through the annual financial report, through the 911 activities report in September, through the next PUC memo, if we were to change rates, what does the actual process look like so that we can make sure we're operating within that framework? Yes, Daryl.
From a PUC process and from a statutory point of view, and Kristen can correct me if she thinks I'm incorrect on this, but I don't believe you need to provide an updated budget to the PUC or DORA because we don't approve your budget or your surcharge rate. You set the enterprise fee rate based on your own internal calculations. The budget that you provided in the memo to the PUC was just to help fulfill or help fill out the public record in the proceeding where the commission is setting that surcharge rate. So I don't believe you owe anything to the PUC as far as budgets go until it's time to ask for the 2027 enterprise fee rate.
That sounds right to me.
Great, thank you. So this is more for, at least at this point, for our internal awareness, priority setting, direction, and will inform future reports. But we don't need to go. Yes, Matt.
So the annual report requires that the budget for the upcoming cycle be included, right?
Right.
Correct. And
So that would be the 27 fiscal year. So starting July 1 of this year through June 30th of next year.
So then toward that, so like assuming we just kind of working backwards on what we had already planned through this calendar year, do we need to also set our priorities and set our rate essentially for next year now,
Yes.
before June 30th?
I would say yes. And thinking through what Daryl and Jennifer said, maybe instead of amending this budget, we call a mulligan on it. And just
focus on 27.
Yeah. Yep.
I like that plan. I feel like we were, scrambling a little bit, right? Trying to be good stewards of this responsibility and this money. But I think we've got a better understanding now, and we've already identified, this issue of fiscal year versus calendar year. So I actually really like the Mulligan proposal.
I'm good with that. So with that, I suppose my follow-up to that would be, is everybody comfortable? Do you know what you are thinking toward priorities and projects? If there are any differences, is it additional? Is it additional support toward the same priorities for fiscal year 27? Is it changes, adjustments, additions? What are your thoughts as far as where we are going with our 27 budget, so that down that thought path we can get to the fiscal year budget and any rate setting that needs to go around that?
In the vein of keeping things simpler as we continue to kick this adventure off and down the road, I like the former. It's a little simpler approach. We've already had numerous meetings not too long ago about those priorities.
And we haven't, sure, the resource center funding, we have not allocated out any of those monies.
So in essence, it would be just a delayed start on those decisions we've already made. Perhaps with changes to the funding amount based on the run rates of what we actually are receiving.
That would be the only major change to account for that I can think of. We had expected these numbers essentially based on a 9-month runtime instead of a 12-month runtime. So either adjusting the level of support behind those projects to account for the availability for those 12 months, or changing our rate setting based on these numbers.
So it would just be a potentially, I mean, if you just did it straight across the board, like an additional 25% to what's already there. Although I always had and this is where I kept stumbling and trying to rethink the budget document to the financial report, was the $200,000. Was that for the resource center that we now are going to be contracting and already paying out? Is that intended to go, since we're not starting till July 1st, is that intended to go through the entirety of, I think it is, right, through this next fiscal year, across this whole new fiscal year? Or would that amount change based on the fact that it's now state fiscal year versus calendar year?
Based on the contract, it would be through this new 27 fiscal year.
13 months.
Okay, so given that stays stable at the 3 cent for more months, that would have the net effect of adding a little more into these other categories, wouldn't it? Rather than just an additional 25%. If let me use an example. If $450,000 is just based on a 9-month projection, does our 450,000 now become, I don't know, roughly 600,000 or whatever?
Gotcha.
Say for GIS support, but then because the resource center is staying static, that 3% is, or 3 cents is going to give us even a little more of a bump for those other categories.
And we're still waiting to hear, what personal professional services look like. Remind me what operating expenses were.
So I need to find the information that Jolene sent out or sent to me had some data. And I'm sorry, I just had a chance to look at it today. So unfortunately, I didn't delve into it a lot. And I gotta go find her email again. There was some data based on what we had paid out. And so I need to find that to see what the operating expense might be. Oh, here it is. Now my eyes have just got to work. The only data we have to date is legal services expenses. That are through March of this year. There have been no other expenses charged.
I had thought we would put operating expenses aside for things like if we were traveling or something like that on behalf of the enterprise.
Yes.
Potential.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, sorry, I totally talked in front of Daryl and Matt. Sorry, guys.
Matt, go ahead.
Did the bill that created the enterprise appropriate and make available some Kickstart funding that was initially going to cover those state services? And have those legal bills been paid out of that such that they shouldn't be considered an expense taken from revenues of the fee?
The allocation was to get it started, but then the expectation, based on my reading of the bill and the CRS, is that we would need to be paying it out of the 911 enterprise revenues going forward. Once that first year's allocation got us up and running,
yep,
we would then need to.
So, but
I think that,
what
and
I'm
I think the first
getting
year's
to is-
allocation. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, and I agree with that. What I was saying is, what, if any, interdepartmental fees have been paid out of that allocation from the state's general
Which
fund?
budget? And
such that
that's
they
a
shouldn't be
Travis question. Yeah.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
a Travis question because the original appropriation was done this has been longer than we thought, 24-25 fiscal year, right? And so then we're already in 25-26. What I don't know and would have to find out from him is if there was any sort of continuous appropriation in the next year's budget bill or not. What Jolene's email seems and spreadsheet that she sent me seems to indicate that as of October 4th of last year, so 25, so that would be this year's fiscal year, money has been coming out of the enterprise for the enterprise fund for legal services.
Okay. Thanks.
Daryl?
But I can definitely, yeah. And it looks like because we didn't have money, it just kind of carried along a negative balance until we got money. And then it paid it out.
This is Daryl. I just pulled up the bill and looked at the appropriations section. It had different appropriations for different purposes. One was for use by the Public Utilities Commission for personnel services. For 65, it was $61,595. That would be paying for, my time working on enterprise stuff, Sage's time, our web developer, pretty much, everybody who's involved in any work in setting up the enterprise. $7,694 for operating expenses, and I'm not exactly sure what that would be. Maybe I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. And $38,406 for legal services.
Does it say it's continuously appropriated or?
No,
just-
no, that was
Okay,
just
so
for
that
the,
would've
that was
been
just for
just right
fiscal
there.
year 25.
Yeah.
So we should have spent all of that already. But when I've talked to Dora before about, when and how they're going to determine what they should be charging back to the enterprise fund for ongoing expenses, I was told that they usually let it run for a couple of years before they even start charging, so they can get an idea of what those costs really are.
And, again, you all from the PUC side haven't charged anything, right? So far. And legal services had a spike of, and might have been because there have been multiple months in there, but a spike of $6,000 for 1 month. But after that, it's kind of been running around, 1,000 to 1,500 a month. So I don't think we're anywhere near the $150,000.
No, but I would also say that knowing that they are going to start eventually charging back, it might be good to keep that in there.
Because of all the contracts and things like that
Yes.
that we'll have in place. Okay.
And I had started to adjust things, but Lynn and we had already done that before. So here's the numbers that we were operating under that 12-month before they were adjusted down to 9-month.
Oh, okay. And it left the 911 resource center one at 200. So yeah, that works.
So I would say, given the contract with the resource center and the potential for the 50, maybe we move 50 out of the program reserves and into the resource center line just to reflect that contract availability. But otherwise, I think, based on our earlier conversations and budget setting, I think we go with these numbers. Unless there's any other thoughts to the contrary. Since we are using these as fiscal year 27 budget numbers and rate setting and affirmation purposes, I think it would behoove us to have a vote on this. Kirsten, we do have the budget as part of this special meeting agenda. Are we able to do that now, or do we need to wait until a future re-agendized meeting to make such a motion?
Let me check the wording real fast. Sorry. There it is. I think you're good to vote because you put in the budget amendment. Even though we're not necessarily doing that, but I believe, yeah, we can do the vote today.
Yes, Matt.
Should we include in the vote the fee rate?
I would, if everybody is comfortable. Oh, I guess that goes back to Kirsten, because that is a function of the budget. Is that okay, or does that need to be agendized separately?
I think that's okay.
So if there is a level of comfort with that, I would entertain a motion. Otherwise, if you want to sit on it and think about it until we do have our next regular meeting on June 3rd, we could always call another special meeting if we need more time before the final June 30th deadline of the fiscal report. What are people's thoughts on this fiscal year 27 budget and rate setting? Excuse me.
I think it's a good approach. I think it keeps it simple and consistent, especially since we're it's a little confusing with our shift from calendar year to fiscal year. I think it keeps it easy for everybody to understand, move forward with. We don't know what projects we're going to fund yet, so it seems to make sense to me.
It makes sense to me as well. So we're still sticking with the 3 cents? That correct for fee?
I think so. I think we stick
Okay.
with, my opinion is we stick with our priorities and our projects that we had planned,
Mhm.
just based on the 12-month budgetary allowance versus a 9-month. And we stick with these budgetary numbers and our current rate setting of 3 cents, I think is where my head is in this.
I agree. I agree. Thank you for doing that, for doing all this.
Yes, Daryl.
I just want to point out that the PUC won't need your enterprise fee rate until August or early September at the earliest. So I don't believe that tentatively stating that you're going to have 3 cents now for calendar year 2027 necessarily locks you in if the board decides later that they need a different amount.
Would just be an additional budget amendment based on any needs and priority changes.
Yeah, so we could adopt this as a proposed budget for purposes of the report that's due soon. And then finalize it later.
My only concern with that is with going to a fiscal year, that's a month and a half away. So
Yep.
is there a reason or any benefit to adopting it as a proposed budget at this point versus this is our fiscal year 27 budget, and if we need to, we can always reassess and amend as required.
I think that's a better way to say it. I think we need to adopt it now. And if we need to amend it later and amend the fee right before the PUC needs it, I agree. That's a better way to put it.
Lynn, it looked like you were.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure. I think it's as we state what we're voting on. And somebody who can eloquently say that, I think we need to just make sure we also call out the additional 50,000 from the program reserve for the 911 resource center. And yeah, we change that amount. Perfect. Thank you.
Thusly.
This is Matt. I make a motion that we adopt the budget and fee as presented on the screen at this moment.
Second.
Motion from Matt, second from Lynn. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we have our fiscal year 2027 budget and fee setting. Really appreciate all the conversation around that. I know this has been a lot of fun making this shift, so thank you. Any further budget talk? Particularly, Lynn, do you have what you need to move forward with the next draft of the financial report? It's not on our special agenda meeting topic, so we can't dive into that. I just want to make sure, as far as the budget is concerned, you have what you need to continue working on that.
So thank you. I do think with this being as simplified as it is, that's going to make that report a whole lot easier. And the draft that I sent out So folks should have gotten an email to review. We can address at the next meeting. And I will probably have an updated version at the next meeting because some of the sections were, even the wording was dependent on this. But I tried to make sure that I, kind of went back, slimmed it down, took out as many sections as were really kind of a lot of unnecessary detail as possible. So if you want to be even reading through that prior to me sending the next draft, that may be helpful. And I will adjust to basically take them all again, reflect the what we just approved for the 2027 fiscal year, and just represent that as what this financial report will include going forward. And work on getting a few more details from Dora, but I think I am good to go.
Yes, Matt.
Lynn, are you open to some suggestions that I can send by email or through Sage by email?
Absolutely.
I really like what you did. I
Okay,
just
good.
have a few points of things to think about.
Absolutely. And I think sending it through Sage is what we need to do, right, Michael? So that
Correct.
you bet.
Kirsten, you unmuted. Is that?
I was just going to say that, yes, I would, prefer that.
Cool. All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Next up are bylaws amendments. So again, particularly in relation to the calendar year to fiscal year change, I was going through both our bylaws and our policies, and we talked about using the calendar year, but the only references are really around the board positions being on the calendar year. So with that, even in our fiscal policy, it refers to each year, which could be taken either way. But particularly around our bylaws, do we want to include explicitly that we will be using the state fiscal year? And whether or not we do we want to change our term of office for our board positions to also match that state fiscal year versus the calendar year? Lynn, you're up first.
Okay, so my thought there, and I'm wondering, having to think through this quickly, is there a benefit to actually staying on a calendar year so that you're not changing out people right when we have to potentially do things like the financial report and other things like that? If you change them out on a calendar year, you're going to get the benefit of some ramp up time with certain people versus not.
I think particularly with our fiscal report due by the end of June 30th, which means also our budget, essentially. And then there's the State of the 911 report and the fee setting, which ideally, unless something changes, the fee setting would also take place at that June 30th timeframe for the budget, which just leaves the State of the 911 report. I think to me, it's a toss-up whether we use calendar year versus fiscal year. Moving it to fiscal year just puts everything in that same time frame. So it could be cleaner and just easier to mentally wrap your head around. Everything is July 1st to June 30th, rather than fiscally we're on the fiscal year, but board position we're on a calendar year. Does that introduce some mental hopscotch? My preference, I think, would be to move to the fiscal year just across the board and remove the ambiguity and potential conflict. Matt, I think you had your hand up. It just went down.
Yeah, for a separate question. I'm still pondering this one. Thanks.
So yeah, I think just for the sake of absolute clarity and consistency, my recommendation would be to include somewhere in the bylaws. I wasn't really sure where best to put it. Could be composition, could be just the fact of changing the board positions. I think it would make sense to explicitly state we are using the state fiscal year. And along with that, I think it makes sense to move the board positions to that same fiscal year, just again for clarity and consistency. But I can go either way.
I'm fine with fiscal year. I mean, it's, we'll either way it goes, I think there's adjustments, in timing with people. So I'm fine with fiscal year. It does keep it straightforward. It won't look like we forgot something as we changed.
Yes, Matt.
That does make sense if we're filing the report and the budget end of fiscal year, then say at the very next meeting, which would be the first meeting of the fiscal year following, if there are changes to board members, officers, etc., that happens right after the filing of the report. So everyone has 12 months to get up to speed in time for the next one. I do think that it would be probably a good idea to put something in there, if we don't already, that the election would be at the first meeting of the fiscal year.
And I don't think we have anything about elections, only the term of office.
Yeah, it says the board shall elect. We could just say the board at the first meeting of the fiscal year shall elect, or something like that. And the reason I raised my hand earlier was, does anyone remember if we took a vote during a meeting setting the fiscal year as calendar year? I know we had those discussions about it. Did we do a vote? And if we did, is this change sufficient to counteract that vote that would be found in the minutes?
Don't believe we ever voted on it. It was a discussion item as part of our bylaws, as I recall, which was why we wrote the bylaws with calendar year positions. But I don't remember us ever calling that out as a separate independent vote. Which is, I'm toward that. It's part of the reason I think, section 2.8 fiscal year shall be the state fiscal year of July 1 to June 30.
So my preference would be to just adjust this that we're looking at based on fiscal year, and then in the fiscal policy is where we set the fiscal year.
Okay. So because this is a special meeting, we need to keep it restricted to the bylaws. So your recommendation is just to change these two items to calendar year or July 1 to June 30. And we can have it on our agenda for our next meeting to discuss and potentially amend the fiscal policy. Am I summing that up?
Yeah. So I think, and I agree with your preference, change the terms of the positions to match the fiscal year. I would insert shall elect at the first meeting of the fiscal year. And then at a subsequent meeting, amend the fiscal policy to be where we would look to what the fiscal calendar year is.
Such as this. Would make one other change here to a singular, since this, I think it makes sense for this one to be plural because it's both the chair and vice chair, where this is referring only to the secretary, financial secretary.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, additional changes, adjustments?
Kirsten,
good.
are you okay with that wording?
Yeah.
Andrew, I heard you speak, but I did not make out what you said.
Yeah, I was just saying I was good with it.
All right. Kirsten, same question, because we have bylaws amendment on the special meeting agenda. We are good to motion and potentially make that change if that were so the desire of this board.
Yep.
Is that so the desire of this board?
I suppose I would move that we make that change.
Adopt the bylaws as amended?
Yes.
I second that.
All right, Andrew, second by Amy. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of these amendments to the bylaws say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, these bylaws are adopted as amended on May 13th. I will get a finalized copy to Sage to get Matt's co-signature against in the bottom, and then out to everybody and online. I will say only further discussion to have on this, probably best at our next meeting, would be how that impacts Matt and I in particular, but also Lynn's remainder of term and consecutive term limits is what I'm going for. So be thinking about that. And with that, we're down to any final comments and adjournment, if so moved. Lynn.
Just one quick question. So the budget we just approved, the projected or the 2027 budget, is that going to be sent out or posted?
I can get that version out to everybody. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Make a note of that just so I don't forget it. Budget and bylaws. Okay. Is there a desire or a need to hold another special meeting before our next scheduled June 3rd meeting? Or considering the amount of work we've done today on the budget, do you, with everything that you have prepared, ready for the financial report, can we get an updated draft for discussion at that June 3rd meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any desire to have a meeting before then?
I don't need one unless Matt's changes were so sweeping that someone looks at it and
No.
goes, "Oh my, maybe we should have one." I don't think so. I think the timing's actually pretty good.
Okay. Then we will plan on our next regular meeting on June 3rd unless something sweeping happens before then.
I've got him thinking. What can I do?
All right. Unless there's anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Matt so moves.
And I'll second.
Matt and Andrew, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you as always. At 4:36, we are adjourned.
Take care,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Bye-bye.